What's interesting is the children of Israel were kind of oppressed by the Roman Empire. Everyone who was given authority over Jerusalem or any of the areas where the Jewish population was high was always given authority with caution to keep the Jews in check. So I would say they were dark times. They were not a pleasant time to live under the thumb of the Roman Empire. And that's why you have a decree that went out that causes further inconvenience to Joseph and Mary. Joseph and Mary had already been through quite an ordeal from the time the pregnancy started. Now, because of the decree of Augustus Caesar, they're having to come back to Bethlehem to be able to adhere to the decree that was being made. It's not an easy thing to make a journey when you are 9 months pregnant. Today, when ladies get pregnant, the doctors advise them, even the first trimester, don't travel anywhere. You got to stay home. You can't ride on a bus. You can't go in a car. You got to be in a very safe environment. And then especially if you come to the last trimester, even more caution is taken. You don't exert yourself. You don't want to do anything that will cause any harm. And that's good counsel. But think about it here in this context of what Joseph and Mary had to go through. Here was Mary, 9 months pregnant, and she had to make this trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And it was 120 kilometers distance between these two towns. And it was not like for us, you just get in a car and 2 hours you're there. They had to actually travel by either donkey or camel, and it took time, and they could only travel during the day, which meant it would take 4 days at least for them to make this treacherous journey. What's fascinating is when you read scripture, you always realize as you read the scripture in full context, even though sometimes in the natural we may face obstacles, challenges, hurdles, persecution, behind the scenes there is a God who is still working all things together to fulfill His word that was spoken. And that's what was happening here in the Gospel of Luke chapter 2. When you look at the actual situation that Mary and Joseph were facing, which was a tough one, and yet God was still using a hostile power to help fulfill His word. And I'm telling you, God specializes in doing this. God can use people who you think are the most evil, are the most far from God. God can still use them to fulfill His plan, His purpose. And that's what God did with this man, Caesar Augustus. He's using this corrupt heathen of a king or an emperor to fulfill the prophetic word that God had already spoken through His prophet. Micah chapter 5 verse 2, where God specifically, clearly prophesies where the Messiah would be born. Hundreds of years before Jesus was born as a Messiah, God had already spoken the prophetic word, and here He was using a non-God-fearing man to still fulfill that which He had spoken through the prophets. God can do this. I'm telling you, God's sovereignty is not limited to just His people. When you say God is sovereign, it means God is sovereign. There is no one who is outside His sovereignty. What God intends to do, He will accomplish in our life. Whatever it takes, God will use whoever it be, whenever it be, however it be, to fulfill His word and His promise.